You're listening to the DFO Rundown podcast with Frank Seravalli and Jason Gregor on dailyfaceoff.com.
Welcome to episode 6 of the DFO Rundown podcast. I'm Jason Gregor in Edmonton, Canada, and Frank Seravalli joining us from Philadelphia in the USA. We are Canada USA podcast. We love it, Frank. Now, Frank, I see you. We're recording early this morning. Are you drinking an energy drink right now?
No, I'm drinking a little probiotic smoothie. This is not a sponsor plug, but by all means, if you own one, please contact us. I need to get the old pipes flowing this morning.
Okay. All right. And in Philly, I know you've had a lot of snow. Do you cross-country ski?
Do I look like I cross-country ski?
Have you ever tried cross-country skiing?
No, if I go skiing, I can barely make it from like the bottom of the hill to the lift. So I can't imagine how awful cross-country skiing would be. Like, why would you even I'm all for clearly I'm not, but I was going to say I'm all for exercise. If that's your thing, and you want to get out in the great outdoors and do it, by all means, but I have less than zero interest in cross-country skiing.
Dude, now downhill skiing, obviously in Alberta, we got the mountains and, there's a few hills that are smaller that are close to my house. So I grew up as a skier, not great, but I did it. But I've never cross-country skied in my life until the last 2 weeks. My wife really got into it during COVID. There's not much else you can do outside and there's lots of trails. And so, but I will say, so if anybody who's downhill skied, when you get on cross-country skis, there's no edges. The minute you're out of the track, it's literally like Bambi on the ice. And man, so my wife, we go on this trail and it's my second day. And the first day was okay. I wiped out right off the start and getting up was just thankfully there was no one watching. It was embarrassing. And then the next day we're going, she comes through and she's way ahead of me because she knows how to ski. And I'm like, don't worry, I'll just catch up. We come over this ridge and all of a sudden there's a curve and a hill. I'm like, well, what the hell?
You got to go.
I try to go down as slow as I can. Well, of course, eventually now I'm freewheeling. She's videoing without me knowing. I get to the bottom and I just blow it. I'm all over the place. And then she posted for a few of my friends and I watched the video. I'm like, ugh, this is the worst. So now I have to, in my mind, I'm like, well, I got to go back to that track because I got to be able to ski down that hill without wiping out. And it's like cross-country skiing. I'm sweating my ass off. I'm in decent shape. I can't believe how hard it is.
That's exactly why I have no interest. I'm more of if I'm doing anything outside, I'm golfing. I don't mind downhill skiing in the winter. Don't really do a lot else outside in the winter. Obviously play hockey indoors, but golf is my thing. And I got to tell you, we're getting, we talked about my snow mishaps with shoveling. My golf buddies were texting me on Thursday and they go, it's been warm here. It's been 10 degrees or 50 degrees Fahrenheit and everything's starting to melt. And so my golf buddy texted me yesterday and he goes, watching this snow melt is better than Pornhub. And I was like, dude, you are not wrong.
So how good of a golfer are you?
Not super good. I'm a 12 handicap. So I get around somewhere in the mid to high 80s is usually where I'm at.
So what's the best round you've ever shot?
83.
Oof.
83 or 81, something like that. Right in that neighborhood.
You don't remember the best round you've ever had? Come on.
No, I think it's an 81 after, and I thought that after I said it, but yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. 84 is my best. And I don't know if I'll ever better that. I don't play golf as much anymore. I used to play it when I was single. We used to have games every Sunday with some buddies. And I like I play better if I chirp in golf. I'm not one of those guys who freaks out if someone's talking in my swing. I'm not that good. I like the banter. I like to try to get in someone's head. The minute it's too quiet, that's when my game falls apart.
Oh, you're one of those.
No, yeah. I like the best tournament I could play at would be in Arizona, right? When the fans are, a few of my golf buddies have been there and that. Now that's how golf should be a little bit. At times I'm like golf, I laugh when the guy, you're a professional golfer. You've taken, I don't know how many thousand million swings in your life and somebody in your backswing clicks. I'm like, dude, if you can't focus, beat it.
Hey, I'm all for that. I love the head games. I love just without even saying anything, how tense a match can get. Someone blows a ball out of bounds. But the real reason why I love golf is it encapsulates all of my vices into one tidy day. You've got gambling and copious amounts of drinking. And if you're lucky, sometimes after the round back in the locker house, you'll have a card or a dice game going. Like seriously, there's nothing better than a Thursday afternoon in the summer as it gets dark late, for us, 8:30, 9 o'clock here. For you, I know it's a lot later, but you play late, hang out in the locker house, drink a million beers and throw some dice. Like seriously, nothing better.
See, I love the differences. You guys call it the locker house. We call it the clubhouse. So just small little differences. I like it. And you're right. Most people don't believe it that in Northern Alberta, in the summertime, we're golfing until 10:30 at night. Sometimes it's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, let's bring in our good man, Tyler, of course, for another buy and sell. We've got Bruce Boudreau, who is coming up on the show today. So that should be very exciting. One of the greatest memes ever on Twitter is Bruce and the darn underneath it. It's one of my favorites. We'll have to ask him about that one. Ty, how you doing, man?
I am good. Frank, I think we're right around the same skill level here for golf. So when we're allowed to travel, you might need to come up here, maybe the DFO Rundown Invitational or something.
You guys, I'm not playing those Alberta courses. You guys are coming down here where summer is like 6 weeks long. You guys can come down here. Spring, summer, fall, don't care what it is. We've got some of the best golf courses in the world right here in Philadelphia, and you can come down and play.
I'm in
too. Beauty. All right, guys, buy and sell. We got 5 questions lined up. 4 of them from me, 1 from a listener as well, but we'll get to that one last. The first one I got up here, staying in Alberta, but south down the QE2, Geoff Ward will not be the Flames head coach 2 weeks from now. Frank, are you buying or selling that?
I am buying, and I only say it with the caveat, which is this. It's so clear that the Flames need a change, but here's the only thing I'm wondering is, does Brad Treliving have that bullet to play to fire at this point Geoff Ward after just going through this process in the offseason and deciding that your interim guy was now going to be your guy? It reeked of inconfidence from the start, only giving Geoff Ward a 2-year deal. And I don't know if he has the ability to make the change if he wants to. Maybe he has to go in a different direction and make a bigger trade, some kind of shakeup.
Yeah, I think a trade first. So I'm selling on that one. I think that Treliving's going to look and say the easy out would be the head coach. They got a lot of guys not playing as well as they have been. I think they'll probably fall back on the fact that Markstrom's been out, and they hope that when Markstrom comes back in, combined with the trade, that will allow them to go. So I think Geoff Ward will get a stay of execution.
Number 2, one of the big names that could be on the trade market this offseason is Jack Eichel. I'm saying Jack Eichel will not be a Sabre when the 2021-22 season begins. Jason, you buying or selling?
Ooh, that's a good question, man. Couldn't they trade Jeff Skinner with him? I'm gonna sell. No, I don't like the Sabres. I don't know what, A, they're not going to get great value. B, how many teams are going to want to take a $10 million player who right now isn't producing? So I'm going to say that the turmoil in Buffalo extends another season. I am selling on Jack Eichel. I think they're going to try to convince him to stay. You heard Ralph Kruger, I think about 10 days ago, say Eichel's got to persevere a little bit more. So while Eichel probably doesn't like it, I just don't think Buffalo can make a trade that makes sense for them.
I am buying. To persevere through what? It's been a constant shitstorm since he got there. In my opinion, I think Jack Eichel has seen some things. He's seen that this isn't getting better quickly enough. He's been there a long time with a real lack of success. And I think, my guess is that he's had enough and wants out. And at a certain point, it's not going to matter what the Sabres try and do to convince him, because they've been trying to convince him for a long time.
Number 3, a couple episodes ago, Jason brought up the idea of Jake Allen taking over in Montreal. And Frank, I think you shot that one down, but with this one, I'm going Jake Allen will end the year with more games played than Carey Price for the Habs. Frank, buy or sell?
I can buy the idea, but he has to play some catch up, doesn't he? Right now. And I think you're taking that a little bit out of context, because he was saying, would the Montreal Canadiens expose Carey Price in the expansion draft, and then would Seattle take him? That's a whole different conversation. And I don't see that happening because of that contract. But will Jake Allen get more games? Yes. Will it be enough to overtake Carey Price in the season total? I'm going to sell and say no.
Man, Carey Price is struggling. That game last night, oh my goodness, the Habs have a 2-0 lead. You'd think that you got the new coach. Usually there's that little boost of energy. Everybody's excited, even though the coach was already on the bench as an assistant. But I will actually buy. I will buy that Jake Allen, because Carey Price, this isn't just a January, February swoon. He hasn't been good for quite a while to his level. Like, he's an okay, he's still a good goalie, but his numbers are awful this year. And I think Jake Allen, at some point, it's about wins. It can't be about the salary.
Number 4, the red-hot Edmonton Oilers, who have won 10 of 13 and are heading into a series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They will win the North Division. Jason, you buying or selling?
Well, I have to buy, because I said at the start of the year they would win. And I've never in 20 years ever picked the Oilers to win the division, because they've been pretty much the worst organization for 2 decades. But everybody forgets the Oilers were really good in 2020 up until 4 games against Chicago, and then they suck balls. So I look at Edmonton. I don't expect them to go, what are they, 11-2 the remainder of the way and dominate like that. But you've got the best player in the game in McDavid. You got another top 5 player in Draisaitl. You've got defensemen that are emerging to play better. And, your goaltending tandem, when you get into more games, will be better than they were in January. So I am buying that the Oilers overtake the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Sell. I think the Oilers have been fantastic, of course, over these last number of weeks, but they haven't been as consistent as the Toronto Maple Leafs. And just like, I don't think the Ottawa Senators were quite as bad as they showed in their first start to the year, and we're seeing that rebound now. I don't think the Edmonton Oilers are quite as good as they've shown over these last couple weeks. So I'm going to sell. I still think they're a firm playoff team. I've said that right from the very beginning. But I think that they're in that 2 to 3, 4 range in the North Division, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
The last one comes from our Instagram when we put out a call. Pat in Van, he says Travis Green will outlast Jim Benning in Vancouver. Frank, are you buying or selling?
I am selling. I think both those guys are going to be around as long as one is in charge over the other. Jim Benning, for whatever reason, Vancouver is the most panicked market in the NHL. And I that says a lot, considering, even just looking at the North Division and the chaos that's existed there. That organization is going to be patient. I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, but they've got these 4 pillars to build around that are so incredibly hard to find. You've got a goalie in Thatcher Demko, a potential Norris candidate in Quinn Hughes, and up front, Elias Pettersson, and a real leader in Bo Horvat. Those are the 4 pillars that this team is building on, and this year is not the finished product.
It's a good question, because I'm curious if Travis Green tests free agency. I know it's a rare thing to say about a head coach, and because you don't really know if other teams are going to do it and look at you. But I probably would buy on that. I think that there's a better chance, because Green's been there shorter, and I think the owner really likes him, that they might go with that strange thing where we're going to bring in a new GM, but he has to keep the coach. We've seen other organizations do it. I know it's not necessarily the best strategy right from the get-go, but I will buy the Travis Green outlasts Jim Benning, because I thought Vancouver, this is the team I thought they'd be this year. I thought they overachieved last year in the playoffs. And that can really skew expectations for teams. And, we talk about Quinn Hughes, Norris Trophy potential, not until he learns how to play defense. And that's not an argument about a young player, but he's a small defenseman and he's really good offensively. But right now he's a train wreck in his own zone. He's going to need a really good partner to settle him down a bit defensively, which I think he can, because he's such a good puck mover and he's very smart. But to be a Norris Trophy winner in today's game, you gotta be decent defensively, and right now he's really struggling.
Interesting, guys. There you go. There are 5 questions for buy or sell. And for the people listening, if you want to have your question heard, just DM us. Our DMs are open on both Twitter and Instagram, at DFO Rundown on Insta, at DFO Hockey on Twitter.
All right, let's get to Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah, we'll get right to the man, Bruce Boudreau. Looking forward to this one.
All right, our next guest has spent his entire life in hockey, drafted in the WHA, and then by his hometown Toronto Maple Leafs. He played 17 years of pro hockey, and then when he was done, jumped immediately behind the bench as a coach. And at the age of 52, after stops in the IHL, ECHL, and AHL, he was promoted to the NHL in 2007 with the Washington Capitals. He's been an NHL head coach for each of the last 13 seasons, where his team won their division title in each of his first 8 full seasons behind the bench. One of the winningest coaches of all time. Welcome to the DFO Rundown, Bruce Boudreau.
Hi, guys. It's great to be with you.
Thanks a lot for joining us. I got to start here. 44 years ago this week, the movie Slapshot was released, Bruce, and you know a little bit about that because you lived it. Your first stop was with the Johnstown Jets, and you actually played with the Carlson brothers, who were the Hanson brothers in the movie. You got to have some stories. What was that like?
It was a good and bad time, quite frankly. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but it was a lot of fun making the movie. I learned a lot about this filmmaking, quite frankly. I was just part of the team. I wasn't like an actor or anything, but I got to see the behind the scenes stuff. It was some pretty funny the hijinks that went on all day long. Actually making movies in itself was really boring because you're sitting around, if you can imagine, with your skates on for 8 hours a day and waiting for that one time you have to cut a scene or something. But at the same time, it was an experience that I don't think A, I'll ever forget, and B, that I wouldn't trade right now.
But you actually lived like the team that it was based on, no? Like playing for the Jets? We were Johnstown. The movie was based on the Charlestown Chiefs, which were the Johnstown Jets. And Ned Dowd was a player 2 years previous for the team. And his sister, Nancy Dowd, was writing a screenplay. And she wrote the screenplay for a thesis at school. She traveled with the team for 2 weeks. And then she submitted it to George Roy Hill, who thought it was a hoot and said he was going to make the movie, and that's how the movie got produced and started.
And Bruce, you mentioned the Carlsons. Were they, that over the top? Like, I know hockey was a lot more physical back then, but was that a little bit of Hollywood, or were those guys, that aggressive? And I know like Oglethorpe's legit guy. I've looked him up, but how was the league at the time as far as a close proximity to the movie?
You know what? It was what it was. Johnstown or Charleston was a last place club. And the three Hanson boys, Jeff, Carlson, John, and Steve, came down. And then they started just running roughshod. And then they got all the tough guys they could get. And they just beat everybody up until they ended up winning the championship. So, the story itself is loosely based on exactly what happened. And like a lot of examples in the movie, like for example, the Carlsons had a big race car set. They never took them on the road, but we would go there every afternoon and we would play racing cars with them. That's what we did. So things like that. They did get arrested in Syracuse for fighting in the stands. They did do all of those things. The crowd started to come out. There was as a matter of fact, there was one time they were filming, and we were playing the Buffalo Norsemen, and the place was sold out, 3,400 people or something. And in Johnstown, that's right to the rafters. And the guys decided they were going to attack a guy in the pregame warm-up, and they did, and had the whole thing in the warm-up where everybody's fighting, and then they canceled the game, which made Johnny Mitchell, who was the McGrath character, the general manager, so upset because he had to give back the money for the game. But all of those things, are loosely based on facts. They made them into fun, except for maybe the ending where what's his name strips and they hand him the cup. That was a little far fetched. Well, the whole movie's far fetched. Who am I kidding? But that's exactly what happened. But it was 44 years later, it's a weird experience because I would never have thought that it lasted. I mean, it was a terrible decision by me at the time, but 44 years later, it was okay.
Now, why do you say it was a terrible decision at the time?
Okay, here's the thing. The Fighting Saints in Minnesota folded, okay? And so there was a dispersal draft. And I was taken number 1 in the draft, the first guy taken in the dispersal draft to Indianapolis. And my agent, Al Eagleson, at the time said, you know what, we're going to sign with the Leafs. So why don't you just go down and make that movie, and then we'll worry about everything next year. And I said, okay. But in hindsight, why wouldn't I have signed with the Leafs right then, gone to Oklahoma City, which was their farm club, get that step in. So when I came to camp next year, they all knew me. And I probably would have had a better chance of sticking because, as it turns out, I went to I did the movie and then signed with the Leafs, and they did send me down to Dallas the next year, and I won the scoring. But if I had had that opportunity the last half of the year before, I probably would have had a better chance of making an impression with the Leafs right away, is all I'm saying.
So when you went in that dispersal draft with the Fighting Saints, you went to Johnstown, was Paul Holmgren your roommate in Johnstown?
Wait, well, that was at the beginning. That was when me and Paul were sent down right out of training camp. He was an 18-year-old kid from St. Paul, and we ended up living together. Him, me, and Dave Hansen. We got a place, $50 each for an apartment back then. And then when the team folded, Paul signed with the Flyers. And then what happened to me is I just already explained to you. And so that's he went the route and has had a tremendous career since then. And I went the other route.
Now, does it amaze you at all, like having spent so much time in the game, sort of how big yet small the hockey world industry is? Like I say hockey's the world's smallest $5 billion industry. Like to know that, you were in Johnstown and with the Fighting Saints with Paul Holmgren, you go on, have your career. He becomes an NHL general manager at some point, and his team's playing against your team that you're coaching in the NHL 4 decades later. Like, how crazy is that?
It's really crazy. I mean, and we both went through a lot of things to get there, but I remember the first time meet Paul and his wife, and we sat down and we talked for 10 minutes as if we hadn't missed a beat in 40 years. And it's a funny world, and everybody knows somebody from somewhere. And in this game, that's why every time I'm watching a game, I look to see if there's players I've coached, just to see if I know anybody, if I ever got on that team.
Bruce, you've had such an unreal career, and I love that you really grinded it out and earned your time as an NHL head coach. So let's go back to your playing days. Were you ever thinking in your playing days you were going to get coaching? Frank, I know, talked about how instantly you got into it. Like, were you taking notes? Were you one of those guys who was always thinking about coaching, or like when did you make that decision that you were going to be a coach?
I think I was about 27 or 28, and I was in the minors, and I said, I don't think I'm gonna, now I'm a veteran. I'm not a rookie, or I'm not a prospect anymore. So I started thinking, okay, this is what I want to do. I don't know anything else. I mean, I didn't go to college. I barely got my high school degree. I always loved it, and I followed it, and it's the only thing I can retain memory-wise is hockey stuff. But I mean, it was at that time that I thought, geez, I'd like to coach. And I mean, I never thought anything else about it, but I always knew that that was where I was going to try to lead to when I was done. And so at 38, when I got the chance, I mean, I just came off a season where I had 87 points or something in the eye, and I knew I could still play, and I wanted to still play because at that time you're hoping you can play forever. But then when I got offered a 3-year contract to coach, even in a lowly Colonial League, it was my thoughts were, this is an opportunity I have to take, because when you're at 38 years old and you're playing in the minors, the first year you don't have a good year or you get hurt is you never get another chance. So then you may never get a chance to coach. So when I got offered that a 3-year deal, I'm thinking, holy crap, security, and I took it. And from then on, it's gone. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of downturns, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun too.
And so you got in and you were a really high offensive player. I'm looking up at your stats and you're just like this guy obviously knew the game offensively. So when you became a coach, Bruce, and, like everybody says, hey, defense is about hard work, but you kind of had that offensive mind. Was that an advantage for you, do you feel, as a coach, that you maybe could relate to a lot of the different roles and that you could relate to the offensive guys and how, even the best players, whatever league you're playing in, sometimes, their confidence might dip, and that you were able to maybe understand that because you were one of the few coaches who was actually a really high offensive player?
I think I've been really lucky. I'm going to answer this in a different way, is that I tell people when it comes into communication departments, I've played every role. Like in the minors, I was always the number one center, the high scorer and everything else. But every time I got called up, I was put into a fourth line checker role. So I got to learn both roles all the time. And then I was called up and sent down so many times in my early years. I understood, and I think I understand what a young player is that gets called up and down, goes through, and I think I know what a scorer goes through when he's going in slumps. I know what a defensive player has to do, and as far as mindset for his role. So, I mean, I think the luckiest thing about me is I've played every role, so I can understand what most every young player or older player has gone through or is going through. And I think that's what's one of the things that was my biggest success stories when it came to coaching.
Bruce, I want to ask you about this week's turn of events, a hit to the coaching fraternity with Claude Julien being fired in Montreal. I don't want to ask you what it's like to be fired, because I think everyone could imagine what that's like, just hitting you like a ton of bricks. But from your perspective, your situation in the NHL has been so different to this point. You didn't last very long. Just going from Washington to Anaheim was such a quick turnaround. And then from Anaheim to Minnesota, like you were consecutively behind the bench for a long, long time. What do you think of Claude Julien's going through this week, and how long does it take you to sort of digest everything that's happened?
Well, I'm pretty sure I can read Claude pretty well in this situation. I mean, and you said you didn't want to ask about everybody gets fired, but the biggest difference is in Claude's case and in our case is, people get fired every day from every job, but it doesn't get where you get fired and all of North America and half of Europe know that you're fired the same day. And so it gets to be, you don't want to go outside the doors. I mean, you're embarrassed. You don't want your kids to go to school if you've still got kids that are school-age children. And it's tough because, I mean, it's not a good feeling when everybody in the world knows that you got fired. And just the connotation of the word fired doesn't mean, it means that you failed. And I think Claude's going through that he thinks he's failed. But at the same time, you don't want to, I went right in and went into lockdown in the house. I mean, I wasn't seeing anybody. My biggest thing was to make sure the kids knew before they went to school. But and I'm sure he's going through the same thing. He's getting a lot of well wishers, and everybody's telling him, "Hey, it shouldn't have happened. I can't believe they did that to you." Blah blah blah. But it doesn't make you feel any better because you're the one that's not working. And as coaches and guys like Claude and myself that have been in this business for an awful long time, we just want to be in the battle with our team. And so you sit at home and you go to work every day at 6:30, and now all of a sudden you don't know what you're supposed to do because you're not at work, and it's a tough situation, for a lot of us a lot of the time.
And so now, having been out for a bit since Minnesota, is that the toughest part? Is just not being in the mix and not being in the battle?
Yeah, well, the toughest part. I don't know what to do with myself half the day because I'll look up and I'm going, holy crap, it's February already. I'm supposed to be behind the bench with somebody because it's never been, like you said, when I got fired in Washington, I was hired actually the same day in Anaheim. When I got fired in Minnesota, I was contacted the same day by Ottawa and Minnesota. And so this has by far been the longest that I've actually been out of work. So it's my wife hates me for it because I'm bugging her. I'm walking around at the house all the time going, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? Everything okay? What are you doing? Like driving her nuts because, like they have their routines that when you're at work all the time. And now I'm not doing that routine. So it's tough. It's really tough actually to start something new when all you want to do is hockey related stuff.
So Bruce, you mentioned that, and I didn't know it was the exact same day. So, you mentioned it's brutal, you're locked down, but then you get those calls and obviously other teams see the value in you. What made you choose Minnesota over Ottawa at the time?
Well, at the time it was, a lot of it just came financially. Minnesota made a commitment. Ottawa, at the time, had said, okay, we'll match it. Then they came back and they said, oh, can you do 3 years? And then they came back and they said 2 years. And so they were just, they were waffling. And my agent said, no, we're going to go chuck this in straight and up front with you all the time. Let's get doing that. Let's go with them. And I said, yeah, that sounds fine. And, it was a tough decision because my daughter lives and my two granddaughters live in Ottawa, but we chose Minnesota. So it was my wife's American and my present wife's American, and our son is American too. So it would have been harder for him to do the whole Canadian thing as well. So that's why we chose it. It had nothing to do with anything other than what was going to be. Pierre Dorian was great. Chuck Fletcher was great. It's just the offer was more. I wouldn't even say substantial, but it was. There was no changing of words or anything in the deal, so it was an easy choice actually to make.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a more secure and that they were more confident that you were the right guy for them. Can you take me back to Bruce Boudreau's first day in Anaheim and how different maybe that was your first time in Minnesota? Like, how do you come in as a coach like that and that quick of a turnaround? And, do you feel your way in? Do you come in like a bull in a china shop? What's the approach for Bruce Boudreau when you join a team right away?
Well, there was two different approaches. Like when I went to Washington was after game 21, almost the same time. And, but I had coached 6 of those guys the previous year and we won the Calder Cup, and I've been there in training camp and everything else. So even though, your heart's beating a mile a minute, it was still comfortable. When I went to Anaheim, I didn't know one person. I knew one person, George Peros, on the team, who I had coached in Manchester in the minors, and I didn't know any of these guys. I'm reading on the plane, Matt Pileski, who's this guy? Who's Devontae Smith-Pelly? I hadn't any idea. So, I walked in there And I recognized Ryan Getzlaf. He came over to say hi. It was the first time I met. But I didn't recognize Corey Carey, and he came over and said hi. And he had to tell me his name. Oh, Corey Carey, sure. Blah, 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 So it was a little weird. But the practices were the same thing. I used the same approach I did when I went into Washington. I said, okay, like we're going to change. I don't know how Randy Carlyle did the things before you, but this is what we're doing now. And from the first practice on, we changed everything to the way I thought it should be, that fit my personality, that the way I wanted to play. And they reacted pretty good. In Washington, it happened right away. They jumped right onto it and everything. It took about 2 weeks to get going in Anaheim to where we felt comfortable. And then once we got comfortable, even though we were dead last at one point, we went, I think, 21-1-2 in the next 24 games and jumped right into a potential playoff position, which we didn't make, but we were eliminated by I think it was the third last game of the season. So, and then the next year we ended up winning the division and stuff. So it was both were good. Both are, you try to put on a good face because you're so nervous. Like the first job with Anaheim, I was so nervous because, or the first job with Washington, because I'd never coached in the NHL. I was just freaking out a little bit. The second job in Anaheim, you're nervous because you don't know anybody. I mean, I knew Bob Murray a little bit, and their head pro scout was Rick Patterson, who was a good friend of mine, and that's probably more how I got the job than anything else. But you're just nervous, and you go in and you've got to determine, you got to put the face on and say, and make them believe that the way we're going to play right now is the way that's going to make us win. And hopefully I did that.
All right, Bruce, we're going to play a little rapid fire, short answers. I got 6 quick questions for you. You ready?
Yep.
What is one hobby that's kept you occupied during the pandemic?
TV, watching hockey. Since hockey's restarted, we watch every game every night, all the time. My wife keeps telling me I've got to get a hobby. I golf all summer long, but it's pretty hard to golf in these times right now.
Well, that was my next question. Could you tell me how many hours a week you think you watch hockey?
Well, it starts at 7 o'clock and it usually ends at 1 o'clock. Last night there was 10 games on. So, I'm in New Jersey doing the NHL Network thing. So I watched as many as I could, and the NHL Network, had the Oiler game on too. So I watched that one. So it's once dinner's over, it's hockey night in Canada and hockey night in the U.S. for the Boudreau family.
There you go. Who is the funniest player that you coached? Like, who could get you in stitches no matter what moment it was?
Jim Ralph.
There you go. Jim Ralph.
He was a teammate. Yeah, he was my teammate. But we sat beside each other in the dressing room, and all we did was laugh. I mean, no matter how serious the situation was, he, as you guys, if you know Ralphie, he could make you laugh in any of those situations.
What is your favorite NHL road city for food?
Well, that's a tough question no, it's not Washington, because we made the Capitol Grill in Washington our favorite place to eat. But I am such a bad eater and such a finicky eater that anything fancy I don't really go to. It's steak and meat and potatoes for me.
Huh. So what is the Bruce Boudreau cocktail of choice?
Well, it's changed over the years. Now I'll have a glass of wine. When I was 22, it was anything that was put in front of me.
And our last question is, what's your plan? Like, how long, if you could, you want another opportunity, how long would you like to coach for?
I don't know. I mean, I think until it wasn't fun to get up every morning and do it. Like, I mean, like I've been fortunate in, quite frankly, because we've never been on a team that's been under 500 at the end of the year, and other than 2 years ago, it never was in a full season where I missed the playoffs since '97. So I mean, it's always been fun. If it becomes a non-fun thing, I probably, at my age, probably wouldn't enjoy it anymore, and probably wouldn't have a job anyway if it became into that situation. But it's something I do every day. I feel I have the energy. I feel like I could get up every morning and go on the ice with the guys and work with them. And I still think I have the emotion to be able to motivate. And so, I mean, at this point, I would like to do it as long as I could. I watch all the football guys. They're all the guys that win. Bruce Arians, Andy Reid. They're all close to their 70s or in their 70s. So I mean, I don't see why hockey people can't do that as well. Other than the skating part, I mean, it's still a time-consuming thing where you have to have the energy to want to do it, and I feel I do.
And so, in the meantime, I got to ask you about your decision to start 2 USPHL franchises, the Minnesota Blue Ox and the Hershey Cubs, alongside your wife, Crystal. What made you want to get into junior hockey in the U.S.?
Well, again, I hate making these short questions into long ones, but in Minnesota, quite frankly, our son was 17. He was a goalie, and the hardest thing to do is when you get, if you have kids, the tryouts are in April and early May, and when you go to a different town in June and July to find a spot for your team for your son to play. So he played 1 year as a third goaltender in the USPHL. Then that coach asked me if we wanted to start a team together, and I said yes, because I knew then that Brady would be get a chance to play, and so we did. And so we started the Blue Ox, and it became pretty successful, quite frankly. And Brady's now a coach there. And so when we moved to Hershey, it just seemed so perfect to do it again. We knew what we were doing. The venue was perfect. The people we knew were perfect, and it was the only thing in the Hershey area that didn't have a junior team, but had such a rich history of hockey that we thought it would be a really neat thing. And so we did, and the support has been tremendous so far. The people have been great. Other than I sit at home and go, what the hell am I doing? Now I'm working twice as much as I used to work, getting this team off the board. But Crystal does so much work, it makes it easy for me. So it's again, a love for the game. I mean, I can't picture myself doing anything else, but I mean, all my kids are into hockey now, coaching or doing skill development. My daughter does the website for the team. And Ben's coaching in Fort Wayne in the East Coast League. Andy's a skills coach in Banff, Alberta. So it's in our blood, and I think it's. I'm happy it's in our blood. I think it's the best sport in the world, and we love doing it.
Bruce, your kids, I would assume are very much up on social media and technology. You have one of the greatest memes out there. You're on the bench. Everybody knows what you say, but it just says "darn" underneath. How often does that meme get shared in the Boudreau family chats?
Well, somebody sent it to me the other day again for the 2000th time. But what? Those guys are all up on social media. I'm the only one that's the dinosaur that is not up on it. I'm so glad I don't have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or anything, because I would be answering all the critics, and I get kicked off. So I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't be in much favor. I would have been kicked off of there long ago.
And one last one for me, Bruce. You were at Slapshot. Is there one character in the Slapshot movie that related close to you when you played?
I don't think they went in depth to to those characters. I mean, they were more with the tough guys, the Killer Hansen, the kid, and then the Carlson brothers and everything else. But I will say this about the movie, that when, if you remember the part where Paul Newman was lying on the bed with the dog and he couldn't get any sleep, that was my apartment, and that they were using. And the way they got that was George Roy Hill came into the dressing room after practice one day and he said, "Guys, I need an apartment for a scene. Who's got the dirtiest, messiest, sloppiest apartment on the team?" And every guy instantly turned and pointed to me. So if there was a pig pen or something like that that they were showing in the movie, that would have been me.
That is awesome. Oh, I love it, man. Well, we could talk for hours about the Slapshot movie, because you, like, when you watch it, man, that's my old apartment. Like, you must just have story after story of that time and just that whole film. And I know you mentioned that maybe it wasn't the perfect decision for you at the time, but when you look back 44 years later, one of the most successful, if not most successful, hockey movies of all time, and you have a real direct connection to it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? It is cool after all this time, and I didn't think it would ever, be like that. But I mean, one more story from the movie was one night, Paul Newman asked Dave Hansen. He said, "Pick a guy and come over and watch the dailies with us." And the dailies are what they shot that day. And so Dave asked me, and so we went there. So there was only George Roy Hill, Paul Newman, me, and Dave Hansen in the room, and I don't know why I remember it so vividly. Probably because Paul Newman said it. Was he turned around? We were sitting behind him, and he said, "You know what? I made the movie Judge Roy Bean just recently, and I just did that one for the money. But I'm making this movie. This is going to be a hit. This is going to last forever." I'll never forget him saying that. And look what happened. Turn around, and the next thing you know, this movie's 44 years later, it's still going strong.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Bruce. We really appreciate you taking the time on the DFO Rundown, and we hope to see you back behind an NHL bench very soon.
I hope so too. It'd be fun. But hockey's great, and let's keep it going. Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Bruce.
Bruce Boudreau. Oh man, I could have sat there for hours, Frank, talking about Slapshot. It's one of my favorite movies. And I love that he didn't like the ending either, because I thought that's the only thing that was bad about the movie. But just hearing those stories, like, that's Bruce Boudreau's apartment. Like, I can visualize exactly what he's talking about in that scene. That's amazing.
It's ridiculous. Like, I guess even when I asked the question at the beginning, I knew that he was there and he played for the Jets, but I didn't know that he actually was an extra in the movie. So, like, it's amazing. You learn something new every day.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I love it. That's what I love about the Rundown. You get guys and they go in different directions that we're maybe not expecting to go in.
Like, think about his whole life, Jason. Like, everything that we talked about, 50 plus years in the game, player, coach, draft pick, he's seen it all. But then, like, how far reaching it is with his family. He mentioned all of his kids involved in the game in some way or another, even his daughter running the website for these 2 junior franchises that he operates. Like, it's his whole, like, how many hours a week, Bruce, do you spend watching hockey? Well, it comes on at 7 and it's off at 1 a.m. Like, that's incredible. Like, you'd think at some point you'd be like, all right, like, I'm taking the night off. I don't need to watch. Like, it's in their blood, quite literally.
Yeah. And it's awesome. Do you see, like, when you look at the type of coach that Bruce Boudreau was, and let's be honest, he's a winner. As he said, he's always been on winning teams. He's always been on teams that are over 500. And when you look at the current regime, and you and I have agreed on this, we didn't think there'd be a lot of coaches being fired during the year. And if they were, it's going to be promoted from within, because A, they'd have to quarantine a new coach. And then B, there's the extra cost for the coach that season. So you looked ahead to the off season. Do you see a few teams that fit Bruce Boudreau? Because I don't know if at his stage of his career, he wants to, start at a Detroit Red Wings, no offense, like a real rebuilding team. Do you see like a middle of the road team that might be a fit for him that could be making a coaching change?
I mean, we were just talking about the Calgary Flames earlier in buy or sell, like that type of team where they have some pieces to play with that could, take that next step. I mean, think about what the Caps were before Bruce Boudreau arrived. They were a team with a young Alex Ovechkin and not a lot else around him. And they were really struggling to start that year. He came in, I believe I was at Bruce Boudreau's first NHL game. It was Black Friday in 2007. So the day after US Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken, it was an afternoon game in Philly against the Flyers. And they went on a tear after that. And so he has this ability to take teams and make them better quickly. And there may be some sort of lifespan or shelf life to that. But I think he's his record speaks for itself. 8 straight division titles in complete seasons. And the other part is, as you mentioned, he's a winner. .635 career winning percentage, like points percentage, that it's up there among the best of all time. So, for a team that has some pieces like a Calgary or like another team that's in that mix but needs a kick in the arse, I think he's the guy to do it.
With Marc Bergevin being bilingual, do you think they have to have a bilingual speaking head coach in Montreal for this next hire? Or as long as they have their GM and a few assistant coaches who are bilingual, do you think he would look, and would Bruce Boudreau at all be an option for Montreal?
Just from the people I've talked to in Quebec, they would say that it's non-negotiable, that you need a head coach that speaks French. And I think they realize the disadvantage that it puts them in at times because they're not opening up the pool to the potential strongest candidates. I will say this, that I think Dom Ducharme, having spent a lot of time around him, nearly a month consecutively at World Juniors in the past, I think he's going to be a perfect fit for this team in terms of attention to detail. He's a collaborator. He's such a change from Claude Julien, 6th oldest coach to 6th youngest. And I think this is going to work out swimmingly, I believe. In fact, the thing I'm surprised most with is that he has the interim tag. So I think this will work out, but I think moving forward, I just don't think that they look at it any other way, that unique special franchise needs a French-speaking coach. And the fact that they've gone to 2 previously that, recently coached for the team in the last 2 decades, like this was Claude Julien's second stint. It shows you how small that population is in terms of not the Quebec audience, which is enormous, just in terms of people that they would consider for the job.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. And Frank, it's another week, and the Chicago Blackhawks continue to roll, and they're showing no signs of slowing down. Like Patrick Kane is legit right now. He's in the MVP race consideration for sure. Lankinen's been awesome. He's probably the front runner for the Calder right now. Like that team, and they're doing this without Taves. They're doing this without Kirby Dach. Like I get more impressed the more, because I'm starting to watch more Hawks games. Like they won, they shut out Columbus the other day. Like they're not just winning anymore on the back of their special teams.
I think I figured out, Jason, you got a little man crush on Patrick Kane.
Dude, I'll be honest. Patrick Kane, when the puck's on his stick, he's the most favorite player for me to watch in the NHL. I don't think there's anyone better. When Kane starts cycling the puck in the offensive zone, Frank, I'm not going to lie, man, gets me a little excited. He's that good of a player.
That's a little weird. Gets you a little excited. But hey, you mentioned Lankinen. I wanted to point out too, Malcolm Subban has been a big part of the Hawks in net as well. So it's been a tag team effort. Lankinen and Subban, 3 straight wins for Subban as well for the Hawks.
Well, that was an awesome episode number 6 of the DFO Rundown. Always good to talk to you, Frank. Lots of action coming up this weekend. It's going to be interesting to see, are we going to see a domino effect from other teams now that Montreal was the first one to make a coaching change? If the heat keeps turning up in some markets, so we'll have lots to talk about on Monday.
Stay off those skis.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Seravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.